Okay, let's dive into a really specific and honestly pretty tricky situation. You've got a deceased person who needs to file a US tax return, but they don't qualify for a social security number. So how do you solve that? Well, there's a key that unlocks this whole process, and today we're going to take that system apart piece by piece.
And that key is the ITIN, the Individual Taxpayer Identification Number. Just think of it as a 9-digit number used only for taxes. It's not for work, it's not for benefits. Its one and only job is to let the IRS process a tax return for someone who can't get an SSN. It is purely a tool for tax compliance, nothing more.
So, here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll cover why this isn't optional. Then, we'll get into how your specific role completely changes the paperwork you need. We'll look at the all-important tax return requirement, the super strict rules on documents, the risks involved in sending them, and finally, we'll put it all together to show you the major pitfalls to avoid.
So, first up, why is this so important? Well, it's simple, really. A US tax obligation doesn't just vanish when someone passes away. If they were required to file, a final tax return has to be done. And if there's no SSN, getting an ITIN isn't a nice to have, it is the mandatory first step. There's no other way to get their tax affairs in order.
The whole thing kicks off with a really simple but absolutely critical action. You take the application, Form W-7, and you have to write deceased and the date of death right across the very top. This is the first signal you send the IRS, telling them exactly what kind of case this is. If you forget this, you're setting yourself up for an immediate delay.
All right, now we get to the core logic of the system. The IRS is basically a machine here. It sorts you based on your legal relationship to the deceased person. Who you are determines exactly what documents you need to submit. It's not a negotiation. There are 3 clear pathways.
And check this out. You can see the cause and effect relationship right here. If you're the surviving spouse filing a joint return, the list is pretty basic. But the moment you become a court-appointed representative, like an executor, the system demands an extra piece of proof, that court certificate. And if you're not in either of those 2 categories, you have to provide the death certificate plus a Form 1310 if there's a refund coming. The takeaway is simple. You have to know which lane you're in and provide exactly what that lane requires.
Okay, next up is what I like to call the system's main bouncer. See, the IRS doesn't just hand out ITINs for fun. You have to prove that there's a real, immediate tax reason you need one. And the way you prove that is by attaching a finished US federal tax return right to your application.
And this shows you exactly how that works. Your whole package goes in, the W-7, all your supporting documents, and the tax return. The very first thing the IRS agent does is check for that tax return. If it's missing, boom, the whole thing gets rejected. End of story. But if it's there, that tax return acts like a key, unlocking the gate and letting the rest of your application move forward.
And let me be absolutely crystal clear about this, because this is a mistake people make all the time. The tax return is part of the application. You do not file the tax return first and then ask for the ITIN. They have to go in the same envelope at the same time. Filing it separately is a guaranteed way to get rejected and cause massive headaches.
So we've covered what you need to send. Now let's talk about the documents themselves, because this is where the IRS is completely unforgiving. They have incredibly strict, non-negotiable rules for proving who the person was. There is zero wiggle room here. And here it is. This is one of the most common and fatal mistakes. The IRS accepts 2 things: original documents or certified copies. A certified copy comes from the agency that made the original document in the first place. A notarized copy? That's just when a public notary watches you sign a photocopy. The IRS will reject a notarized copy 100% of the time. They are not the same. And hey, don't just take my word for it. Here it is, a direct quote from the IRS itself. It really couldn't be any clearer. If you send in a notarized copy instead of an original or a properly certified one, your application is dead on arrival. So, This leads us to a very real-world and kind of scary problem. The IRS is demanding original documents, like a passport, which can be a nightmare to replace. And you're supposed to just send it in the mail to this enormous government agency? That's a huge risk. So how do you handle that? So the big question is, how can you follow the rules without taking the chance of losing these incredibly important original documents? Luckily, the system gives you a few different ways to play it. Okay, let's look at your options. Going by mail is the highest risk, hands down. You send in your original passport and you just have to hope it comes back. A much lower risk move is to book an appointment at an IRS Taxpayer Assistance Center. You go in, they look at your documents, verify them, and hand them right back to you on the spot. The other great low-risk option is to use a certifying acceptance agent. These are people the IRS has authorized to check your documents for them, so you never have to let them out of your sight. All right, let's bring it all home. We've taken this entire system apart and looked at how it works. The process is precise, and it doesn't forgive mistakes. So the key to getting through it is knowing exactly where the common choke points are. And this is not just some academic exercise. The risk is very, very real. In just one recent year, the IRS actually destroyed almost 8,000 taxpayer documents because the application failed and they couldn't get in touch with the person who sent them. That number right there tells you everything you need to know about why getting it perfect the first time is so important. So to make sure your application succeeds, you have to steer clear of these key rejection triggers. Number 1, a mismatch between who you are and what you sent. Number 2, sending a notarized copy instead of a certified one. Number 3, forgetting to attach that completed tax return. And finally, just simple stuff like an incomplete or messy Form W-7. These are the main reasons people fail.
When you get right down to it, this whole thing is a test. It's a test of how precisely you can follow a very strict set of rules. Now that we've broken down all the mechanics, the pathways, and the biggest failure points, there's really only one question left to ask yourself. Is your application package truly built to succeed in a system that has absolutely no margin for error?